Après avoir parlé d'agilité, de
After
frugalité,
talking about
d'inclusion, je vous propose maintenant de
agility,
parler de
frugality,
réenchanter la
inclusion,
société de
we're going
consommation
to
à
talk
travers les
about re-enchanting the consumption society.
Je vous propose un petit exercice de style. Fermez les yeux.
First of
N'ayez
all,
pas peur.
close your
on va voyager.
eyes and we are going to
Vous êtes nombreux à pas
travel.
fermer les yeux, mais bon, imaginons que, en tout cas, moi,
So
j'imagine que vous jouez vraiment
I
au jeu.
imagine
Laissez-vous
that
fermer
you're
les yeux. Chez
closing
vous
your
aussi, fermez les
eyes
yeux. Nous
and
allons voyager dans le temps.
also
Ouais.
remotely. We'll
Imaginez-vous en
travel
2050,
a
tout
long
a radicalement
time.
changé. La société
2050,
impose
everything
désormais
has
que tous
changed.
les objets du quotidien,
Now,
tous les
all
objets du
daily
quotidien
objects,
soient
in
réparables,
fact,
soient
have to be
régénérables. C'est une
repaired or
transformation majeure qui s'est
repairable
peu à peu imposée
and
avec son lot de réglementations,
should
évidemment, pour
be
imposer ces
able to be
changements.
regenerated.
Mais tout s'est passé dans la douceur.
So everything went, or the
Les marques
transition
tirent la
went
majorité de leurs
softly.
revenus
The
de ces activités plutôt que
brands,
de la vente de produits neufs.
in fact,
Chaque création est
make
pensée
their money
pour la
in
réparation dès le
repairing.
début,
Each
prolongeant ainsi son
development,
existence.
in
Et une
fact,
fois parvenue à sa
each
destinée,
development
elle se transforme
has
en une
in itself the
précieuse ressource.
ability
Les
to be
consommateurs trouvent une voie profonde.
repaired, and at
Une
the end
voie
of the
profonde à
life, the
réparer leurs
product can be
vêtements, à
reused.
réparer leur
People are
chaussure.
happy to
Les
repair their
influenceurs et les médias
clothes,
chantent les
their
louanges tous les jours de
shoes.
cette nouvelle ère, de cette
Every day,
philosophie axée
we
sur
are
la
very
réparation,
proud of that
sur la seconde main.
philosophy.
C'est un rêve qui
We're
est devenu
very
réalité.
proud of
C'est un équilibre
repairability,
retrouvé entre l'homme et
secondhand,
l'environnement.
a new balance between
C'est
humankind and
le rêve.
nature. Finally, a
Bon, on peut
dream.
rouvrir les yeux.
A dream. Now you can
Dans cette
open your
première
eyes
partie, vous allez
again,
voir, on va
and
esquisser les
in this
contours de
first
quelque chose
part,
qui peut ressembler
we
à un rêve,
are
qui peut ressembler à
going
une utopie,
to
mais qui
talk
pourtant
about this,
est
what could be a
probablement
dream, a
envisageable.
utopia,
Et on va en
something
parler
that
avec Sébastien Bohler,
could
spécialiste
be
du cerveau,
possible. We'll talk
rédacteur en
about
chef de
this
la revue
with
Cerveau et Psycho,
Sébastien
auteur d'une quinzaine
Bohler,
d'essais, dont
who's
le
an
fameux Bug
expert
humain chez Robert Laffont.
in
On le retrouve juste après le jingle.
in brain, and he is also the author of a book called in French The Human Bug.
On va se mettre là.
So,
On va jouer
Sébastien,
autour de cette
welcome,
table.
welcome.
Vous
So,
voyez, je mens pas,
have a
je
seat.
dis qu'il y a un petit nuage de mots-clés.
Yes,
Ils
there's a
seront peut-être
cloud
très
of
nombreux sur la partie
keywords, as you
interactivité
see.
sur la plateforme
We
à
have
mettre votre petit
people
mot en haut.
reacting on
Bon,
the
Sébastien, on va aller
platform.
droit au but. Parce
Now,
que, déjà parce
Sébastien,
qu'on
let's
a
come to the
pas
heart
tant
of
que
the
ça.
matter, because we
On a
don't have
plusieurs
that
sujets
much time.
qu'il va
So,
falloir
a certain number of
aborder vraiment avec
topics
méthode.
we want to discuss
Donc, on
with
va parler
the
de réenchantement.
method. We're going to talk
Bon.
about re-enchantment.
On sait que l'industrie
Okay.
du textile et de la
We
chaussure, c'est un
know that
sujet
the
particulièrement
textile and
stimulant pour vous, qui
footwear industry is something very
analysez tout ce
stimulating for
qui a trait
you. You're
à
interested in
l'émotion, qui a
analyzing
trait
this.
aux
It's
mécaniques qui régissent
connected
nos
to
choix.
emotion,
Quand on lit le bug
to
humain, on
the
comprend
way we
très
make
bien
choices.
ce qui est
When we read
cette
your
petite
book,
partie dans le cerveau
The
qui s'appelle
Human
le
Bug,
striatum.
there's a part in the brain called the
Le
striatum,
striatum, c'est
and
ce
that
petit truc dans le
is
cerveau un
this little
peu
thing in
indéfinissable,
your
mais que vous arrivez
brain
parfaitement à
that
définir
is hard to define,
dans le
even though
bug
you
humain.
are able to define it.
Le striatum, c'est ce
That
petit élément
is
qui
to
nous
say,
dit il faut
this
tout tout de suite.
element
En un claquement de doigts, je veux
who
tout tout de suite.
says
C'est
you
particulièrement
want
puissant chez les jeunes.
everything
Du coup,
immediately.
je
It's
sens
very
taper plus
powerful
loin là
among
où vous m'attendez
young
pas du tout.
people.
Comment
Now,
on fait
my
pour que les
question
jeunes, et les
is,
moins jeunes, mais les jeunes surtout,
how
se tournent
what
un peu
can we
moins vers la
do
fast fashion,
so that the young
vers le
people,
marché? Il faut
in
commencer effectivement
fact,
par comprendre
don't rush
comment
towards
fonctionne
fast
leur cerveau, parce que
fashion?
c'est leur cerveau
Well, we
qui
have to
détermine leur choix, leur
understand
comportement.
how their
Et
brain works,
effectivement, il
because
y a
this determines their
cet organe
behavior.
en fait qui nous vient du
So
fond des âges,
we
qui s'appelle le
have
striatum, et qui
that
va
part in the brain, striatum,
récompenser les jeunes, mais aussi les moins
that
jeunes, avec une
rewards
molécule qui s'appelle
the
la dopamine, qui
young
donne du plaisir.
people with
Quand
dopamine, the
on
hormone
obtient
of
par exemple un
pleasure.
produit
And when you
rapidement,
obtain a
effectivement,
product
et
quickly
sans effort.
and without
Voilà.
any
Et un
effort,
produit qui
that
donne de la visibilité
triggers
dans un groupe, un statut.
dopamine. And
Donc
a
une marque qui est
product
bien
that
vue, mais en même temps qu'on
gives
peut avoir
you
pas trop cher et qui peut avoir tout de suite sans
status,
attendre.
know,
Donc tout ça,
a
ça fait un
branded
package
product at
qui
a
allume le
cheap
striatum,
price,
qui donne
that
de la
will
dopamine.
ignite
Alors
the stratum and
comment on peut
give
faire autrement
pleasure.
que d'avoir
So
un
how
système
can we
industriel
do
qui
things
surfe
differently?
sur ce
You know,
striatum? Parce
because in
qu'effectivement,
fact we have an
c'est que comme
industrial
c'est une pompe à
system
dopamine,
that
il suffit d'appuyer
surfs
dessus pour
on
avoir
that
tout un système
stratum
qui fonctionne très bien. Mais maintenant, on voit les
wave, in
limites
fact.
que ça rencontre. Alors, est-ce que ça peut pas changer pour le coup? C'est quelque chose, c'est une
The
structure dans le
stratum
cerveau, c'est comme
cannot
ça.
change
Ça peut
because,
changer à la
you know,
marge. On peut voir
well, we
comment.
could
Disons que si on
slightly
utilise
change
tel
it,
qu'il est brut de
but if we
décoffrage
use
issu
it
de nos ancêtres primates, on va
like
vouloir
that,
du
following our
statut, de la facilité, de la
instincts,
rapidité. Bon,
you know,
qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire?
okay,
Premièrement,
But what can we do, in
Cette
fact?
dopamine, c'est le cœur de l'action.
That
On ne peut pas vivre sans
dopamine is at
dopamine.
the
Et
heart
les
of
gens qui ont fait le
everything.
système de tout,
We
ils n'avaient
can't
plus aucun désir
live
parce qu'ils
without
n'avaient
any
plus.
dopamine.
La
People
question,
without
c'est comment avoir
dopamine
cette
have
dopamine sans tout
no
détruire.
desire. But
Il
how
y a une
can we
première chose, c'est de
have
faire les
the
choses en pleine
dopamine without
conscience.
destroying
C'est-à-dire que vous
everything? First of
pouvez,
all, we have to do things
dans
being
vos
fully
comportements de
aware of what we do.
consommation,
That is
soit
to say,
accumuler les achats puis
in
les
your
jeter, et puis
consumption
être
mode, you
dans
can,
l'orgie,
you
dans
know,
l'inflation,
buy and
toujours
buy
plus.
and
Hein.
buy
Ce
and then
créateur, il veut toujours
throw
plus. C'est la
things
base de la
away.
croissance. Bon. Mais on peut aussi
Okay,
remplacer
but
la
you
quantité par
can
la qualité. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a des
also
expériences qui
replace
montrent
quantity with
qu'on peut avoir de
quality.
la dopamine
Some experiences
en
show
réduisant les
that
quantités, en
you
achetant
can
moins
trigger
souvent
dopamine by
et en ayant plus
buying
conscience
less, but buying
du
more
lien d'attachement qu'on peut
aware
avoir à un objet,
of the bond
de
we
la
can have with
qualité
an object,
sensorielle,
the
des couleurs, de
sensory
la texture,
quality of a
s'attacher,
product,
conserver et avoir
the
plus
material, you
conscience
know.
de ce qu'on a jour le jour. Et donc faire durer le plaisir.
So
Et donc
this
ça passe
can,
par la
in
capacité de
fact,
conscience de notre cerveau qui peut se développer
lengthen
par
your
des
pleasure.
exercices
So
comme la
this is
méditation
something
de pleine
you
conscience,
can, in
savoir
fact,
mettre des
work
mots sur
on.
les petits plaisirs qu'on a au quotidien.
And
Ça vaut aussi bien pour le fait de
putting
manger que le fait
words on the
de porter
small
un habit.
pleasures
Donc
you
être
have
plus dans
every
la
day.
lenteur et
So
savoir
do
déguster
things
ce qu'on a.
more
Et là,
slowly and
on
really
parle des jeunes
taste
surtout.
what we're
Pour les
doing. We were
jeunes,
talking about
méditation,
the
je ne sais pas si
younger
c'est hyper compatible.
generations. So I don't know if
C'est
that
pas
is really
impossible. Ouais. Et en tout cas, je
compatible.
pense
Well,
qu'il
it's not
y a un véritable
impossible.
enjeu,
And I
surtout
think
pour
that
les
there's
jeunes,
a real challenge,
de
especially
ralentir, c'est-à-dire de ne pas
for the
céder aux
younger
impulsions.
people,
On a
to
des
slow
expériences
down,
qui montrent, par
not
exemple,
to
que des
give
enfants à
in
qui
to
on
their
laisse céder à leurs
impulsions.
impulsions avoir tout tout de suite, donc c'est le
We
créateur
made
qui est roi, plus tard
experiments
sont plus
also
malheureux. Ils ont beaucoup plus de mal à
with
trouver leur
people,
équilibre dans leur vie parce qu'ils sont
leaving
esclaves de ces impulsions. Dès qu'ils
all the
rencontrent un
freedom to
conflit
their
au travail,
striatum,
ils se
the
disputent.
people
Dans le
will be,
couple, pareil. Alors que
less
s'ils
happy
apprennent à
later
réfréner
on. Well, if
ce moteur à
people, in
instantanéité,
fact, or
leur vie est
young
beaucoup
people
plus
learn how
réussie.
to
Donc ça,
slow things
c'est une affaire de
down,
l'éducation.
reflect a bit
On voit
more,
très bien
they
que les
will be
familles où les parents,
happier
par exemple,
later.
apprennent à leurs
We
enfants,
see
puis ensuite à leurs
families
ados, à
teaching their
résister en fait
children,
à ce
and
petit
then
démon
their
qui leur dit allez,
teenagers
achète tout de suite, ça te
resist
fait plaisir.
this
En disant bah, range ta
little
chambre
voice saying, "Go
d'abord,
ahead,
attends
go
avant
for
d'avoir
it,
cette paire
buy
de
it."
baskets. Tu l'auras
And
pour Noël, tu
the
l'auras pas
parents
pour tout de
say,
suite. Va en magasin, va pas
wait
sur
before you
Internet.
buy
Eh bien,
those
faut
shoes,
beaucoup mieux
wait
en
for
impôts. Donc
Christmas
voilà,
or
donc
something like that.
l'éducation
And,
est déjà
so
essentielle. Et
education
l'éducation en
is
famille et puis aussi à
essential.
l'école,
Family
sachant que l'école a beaucoup de
education,
mal finalement à
education at
réintroduire du temps
school.
long, le temps de
And it's
concentration
very
maximum, c'est
difficult
à peu
to
près 8 minutes en classe. Donc ça a
reintroduce,
d'énormes conséquences aussi pour
this
la formation
time
intellectuelle.
that is
Donc il
a
faut que toute la société s'y
longer period of
mette
time. But the whole
pour dire il n'y a pas que le
society has
striatum, il y a
to
aussi
do
une
that.
autre partie
Saying
du
it's not
cerveau
just
qui nous
striatum,
permet de
there are
lutter
other
contre ces
parts of the
impulsions qui
brain
s'appellent
to
le
fight,
cortex préfrontal. C'est la
and that
partie qui
is
est
the
située plus à l'avant du
prefrontal
cerveau humain, qui
cortex.
s'est développée
And
avec
it
l'ascension d'Homo sapiens, donc la
has
capacité
developed,
de l'homme finalement à voir plus loin
and
que son
that's
désir
the
immédiat et
ability
qui peut
of
être boosté
humankind to
par
see
l'action
beyond
éducative et l'action de
their
groupe et de la société dans son
first
ensemble. Donc, ouais,
desires.
le truc là, c'est qu'à la fois on est dans du
So,
temps long,
so
on est dans le temps
it's a
d'éducation, le temps
longer
de
period of
changement de
time,
culture,
education,
et,
change of culture,
et on est aussi dans du temps très très
but
court, puisque
we're
la fast
also
fashion c'est
dealing with
maintenant le tout tout de suite, et c'est
the
vraiment le tout tout de suite
short
qui
period of
détruit notre
time,
planète.
like
Donc
fast
comment on
fashion.
essaye de
So
réconcilier, comme
how can
disait
we
Nadia
reconcile,
Rajou, réconcilier
as
les deux temps
was
temporalités.
said by
Il faut
Mr.
tricher
Raju, for
avec
example?
son striatum
Well, you have to cheat with your
et tabler
striatum,
sur un besoin fondamental. On le voit
and we
dans les
have to
jeunes, par exemple,
focus
en cours de
on one
récréation ou quand ils
fundamental
traînent dans la rue. On
need.
le
You
voit
see,
aussi en fait chez
this
les
is what
adultes,
you
c'est exactement
see among
pareil.
young
Et
people
donc
and
chez les jeunes, c'est
adults
encore plus
also,
puissant parce
but
que
it's even
ils
more
ont où le
powerful among the
striatum est
young
déjà bien
people
développé, mais les autres
because
parties
the
du
young
cerveau
people
moins
have
développées.
a
Donc le
very
striatum déjà un
developed
peu stimulé. Donc
striatum.
ce qui est important,
But
c'est
what
le
is
besoin de valorisation.
important
C'est
is
vraiment un des besoins fondamentaux de
the
notre striatum,
need
de notre cerveau. On veut
to
être important dans un groupe. On le voit sur les
the
réseaux
need to
sociaux,
be
on le voit
important in a
dans
group.
les
For
groupes de pairs à
example,
l'école,
we
on le
see
voit au
that on the
travail, le
social
besoin d'être
media. We see
visible et
this at
d'être
work.
valorisé.
You want to be visible.
Alors il y a un moyen
You
d'être
want
valorisé,
people
c'est en achetant des
to
trucs qui donnent du statut
valorize you.
social
So
facilement, une grosse
you can
voiture, un
do it
nouveau téléphone,
easily
un truc tout
by
neuf, tout beau,
buying
machin.
things that will have a
Mais en
positive
fait, il y a des
impact on your
expériences qui montrent que les
social
critères de
status.
valorisation
But
peuvent évoluer, peuvent être
we know
façonnés par le
that the
discours et par la
valorization
norme sociale.
criteria can
Et je
change
pense que la mode
because
est presque
of
dans sa
or
raison d'être, en
thanks
fait.
to
Elle a plus
society.
défini, en
And
fait, des
fashion,
modèles de désirabilité.
fashion, in fact, is there
Tant
to
qu'on est
define
dans un
some
critère qui valorise l'individu
desirability
par
um,
l'accumulation,
aspect.
eh
So
ben,
as
le
long as the
striatum va nous
model
donner de la
is,
dopamine. Quand on
accumulating and
accumule des trucs en achetant
accumulating,
rapidement sans
so
effort, ça va
when you
détruire notre planète et on aura
accumulate,
de la dopamine de cette
it's going
façon-là.
to destroy
Mais
your
si un jour
planet,
on a un modèle
but
social qui dit
you will maybe
Lui, il sera
develop your
quelqu'un
status.
d'important
But
dans
now,
ce
if
monde.
society society says, ah, this person is going to be someone important in your group, not because the person accumulates, but because the person consumes less and because the person disseminates that model, well, then the striatum, in fact, will start releasing dopamine when we take more time to do this, when we do better with less, as we said before. So the question then is the social standard. What can we do collectively to make sure that those who are considered as leaders among the young people, for example, in fact, show, for example, second-hand clothes, or that show that they have been able to keep a jacket for more than 1 year. But they have to be designated as those who have succeeded, like a pajama top, for example, as we've seen. Yes, but it has to become a real success criterion. So it means that the individuals have to be at the top of desirability. So what can we do? We need to have influencers, prescribers, either sports people or singers. Today, they are in fact a difference because of the amount of money they have. But in the future, if they could set the example, another sort of example, and then everyone will want to do what they do. This is something very familiar. Same thing among, the primate, among the monkeys, they do the same thing. They want to imitate the leader, for example. Okay, don't hesitate in raising your hands if you have questions, and also online you can ask your questions, in fact, in writing. It's a very open discussion. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I will look at the audience on a constant basis, and I also receive questions on my tablet if you're online. And now, what about the responsibility of the brands? We talk about changing the model. We talk about tricking our brain and striatum. But there is a business model, and the business model is to get everything immediately today. Well, we can't develop new social standards. This is what I have just described, especially by recruiting and doing lobbying among the stars, the influencers, the major sports people, to show another desirable model. But this means investing time and taking time to convince these people so that they themselves change their desires. I also think that there's a real role to help the families, the young people, the consumers, and encourage them to have another vision of things, giving them daily keys, for example, to help parents educate their children, telling them what is good today is not fast fashion, is to show your friends that you're able to do better with less, you're able to resist the pressure of consumerism, and you can play the role of a leader. You can also organize a space for public exchanges. And what the brands can do is, in fact, take on peripheral roles and start initiating public discussions and debates. And this to make citizens aware of these notions, how to take more time today, how to resist this instinct we have of having everything immediately. So maybe we can start conference cycles, maybe we can organize clips that we disseminate on a large scale to make people understand what is good for the long term. And if we want to mobilize the best part of our brain, and not the prehistoric striatum, but the prefrontal cortex, the one that can look at the future, who can resist primary impulses, we know that this part of the brain can only work collectively. And we know that the human being, if you tell him, give up something easy because you'll get a benefit in the long term, it will represent an effort. But if collectively people do that, then it works better. We've done experiments showing this, and we can go very far, if we do this as a group and if we have a system to recognize what we are doing. And today, some people say, I'm wearing secondhand, and it does create a certain little pressure here. And if you do it yourself, you think, well, it's not completely silly because others are doing it. And this is something that mobilizes your prefrontal cortex. If you're the only one, doing something, and if, for example, you do something on your own, you lower the prices, you produce a longer or more durable product, it won't work. If collectively this is done, it works better. So collectively, we can use this prefrontal cortex more easily. Yes, yes. And this makes it possible to have common good instead of individual interests. I see someone in the audience who raised his hand. Your name, maybe, first of all? Pierre from Amis de la Terre Environmental Organization. I have a question. The question on the brand's responsibility. I'm not sure I was convinced by your answer. I understand that we have make families aware, work with stars or personalities to try and set up a new system. But I don't think it's the role of the brands. At least the brands don't do it today. On the contrary, they create the system we want to fight against with the families. So I think that the role is maybe for the state. Refashion does quite a few things, but the brand responsibility, they create that system of an immediate reward, and this is something we need to look into deeply and try and see how we can change that. It's not really for the families to change their behavior, more the brands. Now, we have these brands who have a business model, in fact, based on those, impulsive purchasing. So how to make the brands aware and change their behavior more than the individuals? Well, yes, it's the question of the business model. And it's the raison d'être of the brands. We have brands whose raison d'être is a financial reward and dividends for their shareholders. And here, you have the shareholders, the top management who are configured in this way. And when you look at their brain image, we see that the fact of increasing the income will release dopamine. Money is, at the basis of all, or like any other stimulant, so money, in fact, has a big impact. So as long as we have a business model with people who are addicted to making money, then it fails. How can we change that? But that's a question of civilization. I've talked about a raison d'être, purpose. So that has to do with the senses in many societies today. We have, for example, it's hard to recruit. 10 years ago, you could hire people just thanks to high salary. Today, people don't work like that anymore. So already some companies are saying, okay, our purpose, our raison d'être is no longer just profit. It's something else. and it can be acting today in a way that is compatible with results positive for the planet in 20 years. It can be respecting a certain number of values that feel familiar and meaningful to the employees. So that is not just looking for pleasure, dopamine, and money. No, it's more looking for a meaning. And here, it's another area in the brain that is, in fact, activated. And the benefit is not the same. In the first case, it's an individual excitation. In the second case is a more peaceful feeling. And there is communication between the two areas. And the idea is what makes people happy. And if it is dopamine, pleasure, power, it doesn't give you a long-term happiness. And today in our society, all the brain indicators or signals are in the red concerning mental health. So we see that what we are to get from consumption is no longer there. Well, when you talk to people who find meaning in their action, we see that it's a way, in fact, of feeling that void that we can often feel if we just consider the short term. So companies can, in fact, work on this rather than offering, immediate excitation. They can talk about a long-term project, maybe a bit less profit, but more values. And some companies make that choice today. And brands have to think about the long-term investment. Am I going to, in fact, propose long-term values, or should I go on feeding my shareholders? Well, yes, your question was how to work with these brands that act as real predators.
Visiblement, ils trouvent du plaisir, eux, à voter pour gagner encore plus de dividendes. Mais ça rejoint
il y a une addiction à ça.
Predators.
Oui, il y a une addiction à la dopamine liée au profit et surtout
Yes.
toujours plus.
And the other, that the stadium is also
il donne de la dopamine tant qu'on augmente les doses,
set in such a way that you get pleasure as long as you increase the dose. So if, for example, you stick to the same amount of money, you don't get any dopamine anymore. It's like a cocaine addict, Do we have another question? Yes, we'll have the gentleman. Adam Setkaoui, representing the Federation of Circular Fashion. What are the channels we can use, media, communication, to influence collective intelligence? And can AI play a role here in expressing the needs and to stimulate some positive actions for the consumer that we are on a daily basis? And in the companies, are made up of individuals. So these individuals, if together they have a certain collective intelligence, maybe we can act on that. Collective intelligence is a notion that's been around for some time. From a scientific point of view, it's difficult to have a base for that and try and reproduce that model of collective intelligence. We're just at the beginning, maybe. There are some signs showing that to develop collective intelligence, there are rules to put in place. But today, it's something that you see in a citizen assembly, where you have some rules like sharing information, no censorship when people are doing brainstorming, no hierarchy, no one should be perceived as the leader. Otherwise, open speech won't work. So there are a certain number of rules to put in place to have a collective discussion. This gives good results if you respect the rules. But I think that the best area, once again, is citizen assemblies, like we had for the climate, for example. And there, yeah, we get good results on paper when it's well organized, this collective intelligence. But then it's when the traditional power implements a thing that maybe you get some difficulties. But once again, we're just at the beginning of that. We had some scientific publications showing that in the social media, you quickly get drifts and you start having a polarization of points of views, and then immediately you have the rejection of the other. And there we can, in fact, intervene to remember the basis of human relations and encouraging people to listen to the point of view of the other. So yes, there are studies showing that AI can facilitate such a dialogue, but to go further, well, that'll be a real challenge. Collecting information, processing and making proposals. ChatGPT does this a bit, but then when we go to the end of the reasoning, you get to the following question. We're talking about a desirable future, how to make sure that people want to go for this or that. Well, when we get to some shortage and geopolitical issues, absence of resources, then things are going to get very difficult. We got to 1.4 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. Things are moving so quickly. So when we get to the moment where we're really faced with difficulties, it won't be a question of desirability anymore. It will be a question of survival. What will motivate action is not saying, it's a real opportunity. No, it's because things will become necessary. And we'll have some crisis situations like those we see in the conflicts, like, the Second World War. When the British decided to get in the Second World War, it's not because it was a question of desire. No, they saw it was essential, needed, necessary. And that is one day what's going to happen. And often in the discussions, what people ask, can people put in place on a democratic basis rules to take on the challenges? And it always comes to a green dictatorship. And AI is seen sometimes as an impartial judge that could distribute the cards among the human beings. But the question will arise, maybe it will be a tool, and how to make sure it's not an open door towards a technocracy governed by computers. Madam, you had a question. It would be the last question. I can see also many questions in the chat, and Stéphanie Veilly, Decathlon, you talked about how an individual could influence a group thanks to his or her actions. Do you have practical examples of that? Maybe one person who was able to do that. I would like to have an example of this sort of Nelson Mandela, Mr. Gorbachev, and what shows social psychology behind changes. It always comes from individuals who have, for example, a protest message. In the commercial field, someone who's really changed things. Well, the image of Cristiano Ronaldo during a press conference, he had a famous beverage in front of him, and he said, I don't want that, I want water. And the share price of that company producing the beverage went down. Yeah, but after that, don't forget where he went to play. Well, anyway, that shows the power of an individual. You know, we have to look for these leaders.
Du coup, une question, Fanny, Clarisse, comment envisager que les marques vont scier la branche sur laquelle elles sont si bien installées?
How can you imagine that brands are going to saw the branch on which they're sitting? How to convince also the influencers? You pay them? How do you influence these people in 30 seconds? What do you tell these people? We go and see Mbappé tomorrow. What do we tell him so that he will change? I know there's no miracle solution here.
Non, je pense que là,
well, we have to work on persuasion techniques. There's a theory of commitment. You know, when you lead someone who to make a public commitment, well, that's one way. It's difficult for that person to come back and change behaviors completely. There's also reason, you know, people when they're taken up in a system, at one point, they can understand how it all works, how their brain works. I see some leaders changing, citizens also, and they have few maybe financial commitments. Understanding how these molecules in their brain work, you know, some people will decide, oh, I don't want to go in this direction anymore. It's finished. I want to bring a sense of purpose. So we also have to explain to people, if I follow my impulse here, you know, it's as if I were an ape. Where's my humanity? Where's my human dimension? And if I have children, am I just going to be selfish? And isn't this completely absurd? Now, these persuasion programs, where we can work on them, there is also a question of ego and competition. We know when people have a strong ego and you have a lot of these people in one room, who is going maybe to be more virtuous? You know, if we ask these people to do something on their own, they might not do it. But if they're all together and they all have a big ego, then they will maybe, you know, look and set an example. Okay, so thank you very much, Sébastien. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time. What is your word? Reactivate the more human part of our brain. Reactivate. Thank you very much, Sébastien.
As we've just seen, there's a very emotional relationship with our clothing, with the choices we make. And in the end, I would propose that we question ourselves on change of behavior. We need to accelerate here. So we're going to have Sandra Baldini, and we're going to talk about consumption habits in Refashion. Inès Bizot and Sandra Baldini. Thank you to all of you.
Bienvenue, mesdames. Alors,
welcome, ladies. So, Inès Bizot, can you tell us about where you work? In fact, with June Marketing, it's a studies institute to explain.
Merci Inès. Bon, Sandra, Refashion, a priori, tout le monde connaît.
I think we know each other, Sandra, for Refashion.
Alors, mesdames, sans plus attendre, on est allé sur le terrain.
Ladies and gentlemen, we went in the field and we've questioned consumers. Let's look at the video. If I like my clothes a lot, then I keep them a long time. I haven't had any real problems with gaining weight. 2, 3 years, 3 years, 2, 3 years. I keep them 20 to 30 years. I keep them until I can't wear them anymore. It depends on the type of clothing. And it can be 4, 5, 6 years. I try to keep them as long as possible. Then, as far as the quality of what I've bought, it can depend on how long they'll last, in fact. I keep them until they're no longer usable. No, quite frankly, I keep them a long time.
C'est très aléatoire selon les saisons, mais je dirais en grande quantité.
Well, I have a lot of clothes. Before I had a lot of them, but now I tend to consume more vintage clothes because I get tired of clothes. 3, 4, maybe at 10 years. I think I buy clothing once a month, or maybe once, twice a year. Does it count? How many? Does it count for each type of clothing? This year, I was really scandalous. I bought too many. 20 or more pieces of clothing. I can't even count. I bought at least 10 or so. The question is, how many pieces of clothing new did you buy? Well, jeans, because the prices are going up, So price, quality, or style? Well, price and quality. Quality because they last longer. I think it's important that I'm willing to pay a bit more for something that lasts. For me, price and quality, style. For some things, it's quality, but usually I choose the cheapest, which is the lowest quality, though. I'm not really looking at the brands all that much. How many new clothes do you buy? Less, more or less. Well, the more I get older, the more I buy. I think I buy a lot less new clothes than before. I buy a lot. I buy more. I buy more than before. I must say that because I'm interested in sustainable fashion less. What is your definition of fast fashion? I think it's something that doesn't last, the quality. I think fast fashion is to produce a lot to incite the consumer to always be unsatisfied. The prices are affordable but not quality. Fast fashion is clothing that is not expensive, that doesn't last long, and that you'll have to rebuy often because they're quickly no longer wearable. Clothing that are produced in large quantities, they're not exactly quality. These are produced in large quantities and then thrown away, half of them thrown away. Do you think that to be stylish is stylish to be responsible? Yes. Yes, because the vintage world has developed a lot. Yes, you have to have the means. There's used clothing, there's small, you have low prices, you can find pieces of clothing anywhere. Yes, look. So as we have seen, there's a bit of everything. The reactions are interesting. But Ines Bizot, with June Marketing, you're interested in studies around levers and breaks to change behavior. Can you say a few words about this? Can you say a bit about this? Yes, when we talk about change, when we talk about consumer modes, changes of models, we see the consumer speaking. And here, I'd like to share with you some teachings, what we have learned to see how you can talk in a just way, to make things change. In fact, you have to bear in mind that the term ecology is very broad for the consumer. We're talking about a subject that he doesn't understand necessarily. It's a bit nebulous, there are social, political challenges here as well. And it's so complex, the subject for consumers, that at the end of the day, he tends to be a bit paralyzed and he's not going to react. Even if people are going to say, yes, we have to change, there's still a break on what they're going to do. with regards to consumption modes. So you have to understand the brakes on this for you as brands because you need to address this. We talk about motivation, everyone is familiar with motivation, you know. So there are a lot of breaks on this, if you like, and I've just listed a few of them. Here we have a few listed. So how do we change this? Change this? Well, we try to understand who we are addressing, what consumer we are addressing. We also try to find arguments or operations which are in line with this. Do you want me to read these breaks on changing behavior? I try to give a few words of advice, some good practices that we have highlighted. First of all, you want to do things in a simple way for the brands. The first word of advice is to act simply, always in life, but here even more, because the subject is so complex. If you want to be effective, you need to put yourself at the level of the consumers in terms of visuals. You want to be basic, you want to be brief and immediate. If you give too many ambitious objectives, you paralyze people. So, in fact, what you want to say that ecology is a sum of small gestures. So you need to have pictures which reflect this. For each of these recommendations, I give examples. The second word of advice, we call this to have empathy, in fact, to have empathy vis-a-vis the consumer, understand his difficulties, understand his doubts, admit that this is a complicated subject. You don't want to judge him, validate the imperfections and doubts he might have. And obviously, you want to avoid trying to, make injunctions about what he has to do. Thirdly, you need to be humble here. The ecology is a subject that is constantly evolving. One day we ask you to do this, the next day, the opposite. And so you need to be humble, you need to be consistent. You have to understand that nothing is frozen in ecology. There is no miracle solution. You can't block yourself in one approach. Then you need to also be able to find your pleasure here. When you're talking to the consumer, you need to exit, the preaching tone in dealing with the consumer. You have to get out of that constraint approach. You want to, have a joyful transition and re-give, the social desirability of ecology. So finally, the last posture, probably the most difficult to adopt here, is that you need to change paradigms. You need to be disruptive, in fact, in your approach.
Merci beaucoup Inès, merci d'avoir
Thank you, Inès. Thank you for being brief here. I know it's not an easy exercise. We're going to look at another brief video, and then I want to hear you. This is more oriented around recycling and repairability. Do you prefer new or used? New. I have a lot of allergies, so for me, used is out of the question. New. New is new. More used. I buy some new, but I avoid. I'm a bit both. For me, it's always new. I hesitate. People have worn them, they've sweated, etc. Today, I have, in fact, an outfit today which is made of almost everything that I've recovered from my parents, friends, etc. Used, I'd like to point out, I have nothing against new clothing, but very often it's a bad quality compared to clothes made 10 years ago. What do you buy used? Well, this trench coat is used, small price. Shoes, t-shirts, sweaters. For buying coal, everything that's sustainable. Shorts, sweaters, coats, t-shirts, sweaters, rarely jeans, because I buy short versions. I buy t-shirts or
Les sacs, la
hats,
blouse et les
scarves,
chaussures, vestes,
purses,
t-shirts.
shirts,
Moi,
shoes,
ouais, c'est plus, enfin,
jackets.
vraiment, chaussures, je
For
peux pas.
me,
Enfin, je pense que
shoes,
ça me vient un peu de ma mère.
shoes,
J'y
I
ai
get them
pensé
from
faire
my
une fois, elle m'a
mother.
dit non, surtout pas.
I would wanted to buy secondhand shoes. My mom said never.
Internet. Parce
Are
qu'en
you
boutique,
internet
j'arrive
or
pas à faire des
boutique?
choix.
En
Internet,
neuf, moi,
because
je
in
suis
the
plus
boutiques I can't
acheter en
choose. For
boutique, mais
new
en ce moment
clothes,
plus
I
internet.
Si on
buy
a fait
in
un changement, il faut
boutiques.
dans le vrai pour pouvoir
If
quand même
it's
voir le
secondhand, I
vêtement, pour
buy on the
l'essayer.
internet.
Les deux
You
maintenant.
know, I
Parce
buy
qu'il y
on
a des choses
both,
qu'on peut avoir en
internet
boutique
and
facilement et
boutique.
des choses que
There are
je
things you're
préfère
easily
attendre, avoir
available in the boutique, whereas there's some things I'm
d'opportunités sur
prefer
Internet, ouais.
to
Plus
wait
en
to have better
boutique. Actuellement
opportunities
sur
in the
Internet
internet.
parce qu'en boutique,
Boutiques
je ne
on
trouve pas ma
internet
taille.
today
Je
because
fais pas mal
in
sur
boutiques I don't
Internet
find my
maintenant.
size. A lot on internet.
Ouais, ouais,
Internet,
ça
internet,
évolue,
yeah,
lisible
yeah,
et
yeah,
efficace.
J'achète
internet.
sur Internet.
Easy,
Donc,
efficient,
c'est la même chose, oui.
internet. Yes. Do you bring your old clothes back to
Ça, non, j'ai
stores for
encore jamais fait.
reductions? No, I've never done that.
Non. Quand
No.
je peux, oui,
When I
même s'il y a
can,
pas de
yes.
réduction.
Non, je
Even
l'ai
if there's no
jamais fait.
reduction.
Je
No,
savais
I've
pas que c'était
never done
possible.
it. I didn't even
Oui.
know it was
Je
possible.
l'ai fait
Yes,
en fait.
I've done it.
Je crois
Yes,
qu'il y a moins de passion que
I
rester
did
au
it.
courant,
But
mais oui.
yes, I've done it before. Garbage, resale, recycle,
Quand j'ai le
repair,
temps
or
et quand j'ai la
charity.
possibilité, je
When I
donne à
have
des
the
associations les
possibility,
vêtements
I
que
give it
j'utilise plus.
to
Quand ils sont en suffisamment bon
associations.
état, essayer de les
If they're in good
revendre, que ce soit en Europe ou
state,
sur du Vinted,
well,
ou
I
les
try to
passer à
sell
des
them
amis qui,
maybe on
elles,
Vinted,
pourraient
or
être
I give them
intéressées.
to
Soit je
friends who might
donne, soit
want them.
ce
I
qui est
either give
potentiellement revendable,
or
je le mets
what
sur
is
Vinted.
potentially
Recyclage.
resellable, I
Oui,
sell.
mais pas à la poubelle.
Moi,
But
j'achète jamais.
I give
Jamais
them, but I
recyclé.
don't throw
Soit
them away.
j'arrive
I
à vendre sur
recycle.
Vinted, sinon
Either
en
I
point
sell
relais, je
on
sais qu'il
Vinted
y a souvent ça dans
or
les déchetteries.
I
Les
know
vêtements ne
that
sont plus portables. Donc,
there are some clothes that are no longer
je les donne à la
wearable.
benne si ça vaut la peine, mais en
So I
général, je
put
les
them in
jette
the garbage
parce
bin.
que c'est juste un torchon.
I put them in the garbage bin because it's just clothing. Do you repair
Oui, oui,
or
oui.
have them
Dans ma
reworked?
longueur de vêtements.
Yes.
Tu vois ma chemise
Yes.
bleue là, que je mets tous les jours comme un
Yes,
sale.
yes, my blue
Elle a
shirt.
un
Yeah.
trou, même il fait la taille.
It
Mais
has
là, je vais essayer de le
hole.
reboucher,
It
quoi,
had
parce
a
que j'aime la touche.
I'm gonna
Je ne
try
sais malheureusement
to
pas.
have it
J'essaie de
repaired. No, I don't know how to
comme je peux,
sew.
quoi. Mais je suis pas
I
une
try
grande seule,
to do what I
Et
can, but I'm
pareil,
not very
reprendre,
good.
finalement, j'ai quand même beaucoup touché à
Well,
la couture,
finally,
donc je me
I've
débrouille,
I've
disons.
done a lot
Voilà,
of
bien
sewing,
sûr.
so I can do it.
Si
Yeah.
c'est les vêtements que j'aime beaucoup,
If
bien
they're
sûr,
clothing I
je les
like,
répare.
yes,
Ça me fait
obviously I have them
rêver, mais
repaired.
bon, c'est rare,
Yes, I've done
je
it,
fais très
but
attention.
it's rare because I'm very careful with my clothes. Do you have repair
Ouais,
workshops
ça
in
pourrait
the
être pas mal, hein,
stores?
pourquoi pas?
Oui,
Yes, why
pourquoi pas?
not?
Oui, ça
Why not
m'étonne
a
un peu tous
repair
dans la vie tous les
workshop?
jours.
Yes, I
Oui,
think this is good.
entièrement.
Yes, why
Il
not?
y en a
Yes,
pas
I would
assez.
take it.
En vrai, oui.
I
Oui,
think
c'est
there's not
super
enough of these
intéressant. Après, le fait de
repair
payer,
shops.
sachant que
It's
ma mère peut
interesting,
me faire
but
ça,
then to
non.
pay
Non,
when
les
my
vêtements, ils
mother
sont
can do it
trop
for free,
chers pour
no.
que j'aille le faire. C'est-à-dire que je
No,
suis persuadé que
I
la
mean,
réparation, elle va coûter au
I
moins
think
le double
that
de
the
mon
repair is
t-shirt.
probably
Ouais.
going to cost as much as a new T-shirt. You're sorting in your
Écoutez,
cupboards
actuellement, je pense
is
que pour
today
l'instant,
or?
rien, parce que tout ce que j'ai me plaît, je le
Well,
porte. Peut-être
no, everything I
que
like
je
I
me rends compte
wear.
qu'il y a des choses que je n'utilise pas, mais
There's
que j'achète.
something that I
Peut-être
don't
qu'il faut que je
wear.
verse un peu sur
Maybe I
le
should,
mode
but I
d'achat.
buy.
Moi,
Or maybe
c'était
I'm gonna
il
have
y a
to
3 semaines.
change.
Ça déborde.
Yes,
Ça
I
déborde
sorted
beaucoup.
C'est à peu
3 weeks
près
ago.
une
It
fois dans l'année,
depends.
disons.
I do it
Normalement, je
once or
pourrais me
twice
mettre
a
ça
year.
prochainement. Enfin,
I
je
should
procrastine.
sort my closet soon. I'm just procrastinating.
Et oui, la procrastination. Mais oui. Puis un trou de la
Yes,
taille d'une
procrastination.
formidable.
Yes, obviously.
Sandra, votre truc à vous,
Sandra.
et le truc de Refashion à vous, votre
So,
dada,
you
c'est
at
justement la
Refashion
transformation des comportements,
is
le
the
changement des comportements.
transformation of behavior, and
Qu'est-ce
to
que
accompany
vous envisagez
that, well, I think we learn a great deal from these people. I think it shows us where the French are with regards to this subject. We see that there's a real need, educational need, and I think that we need to do this regularly. It's clear that we have based ourselves on the levers given by Inez yesterday. We say we're going to show it's fun, it's creative. This is a universe which speaks of clothing, of oneself, of usage. And so we think we need to treat the subject in a more positive way. And that is to say, to have an educational approach and to, as far as wearing new is fun. So today we have a mission called Refashion Mission, and we have a web series. And with this web series, in fact, the idea is to give, if we start training and educating this group which is very evocative and which, if you want to have good behavioral habits, it can be fun. It's not a problem. It's not boring.
Donc c'est
And this
vraiment
is an
l'activité qui est
objective
préférée.
that we
Ni sur
are
les
giving
fashions. Eh bien,
ourselves.
je vous encourage vraiment
So it's called
à
Mission
regarder et puis
Refashion, the
à
web
savourer,
series.
vraiment.
I
Et vous sur
encourage
le
you
chat,
to
dites-nous
discover
aussi,
it.
est-ce que
So
ça vous arrive
tell
régulièrement
us,
de
do
donner,
you
de jeter,
regularly
de trier, de recycler,
give
de
your
réparer, bien
clothes,
sûr?
sort your clothes,
Voilà,
have them
n'hésitez pas à
repaired,
participer
altered?
sur le chat. Merci beaucoup,
Perhaps you
mesdames,
can
pour
tell
cet
us on the
éclairage,
chat. Thank you,
court, dense, mais
ladies,
très
for
riche. On
this
retrouve
very
tout, on retrouve
rich
votre étude également
and
sur le replay et sur le
interesting
site de Refashion.
information. We
Merci
find
beaucoup.
this on the Refashion site. Thank you.
Alors, nous nous sommes projetés en 2050.
So
On a
we've
souligné
projected
le rôle
ourselves
important
in
des médias, des
2050.
influenceurs.
We've
On l'a vu avec
underlined the
Sébastien Bohler
role
notamment.
of the
On a vu le
media
rôle important de la
influencers.
représentation
We
du
heard
textile et de la chaussure dans
Sébastien Bohler,
le grand récit
and
collectif,
we've
le
looked, in
fameux grand
fact,
récit.
at the whole
Et là maintenant,
issue
on va justement se
of
poser sur ces
recycling and
médias, sur ces
shoes.
influenceurs.
And we're
On va
going
se
to now
poser
look at
avec
the question
Swan
of the
Périssé,
media,
avec
the
Aboubacar Sega
influencers.
Kanouté,
We have
avec Victoire
Aboubacar
Sato
Sega
et avec
Kanouté,
Régis Langlade
who's
qui
a
arrive pendant le
journalist,
jingle.
Victoire Sato, Régis Langlade, and Swan Périssé.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, and
Et
good
bienvenue.
morning to all of you, and welcome.
Alors,
So,
on va parler tous ensemble, mais juste
we're going to
juste un petit
talk.
tour. Là, on prend un peu le temps. Vous voyez, le
First, we
chrono, on a
go
40
around the
minutes.
table.
On est bien.
Okay, we
Vous
are
aurez
on
aussi
time. We
la
have a bit
possibilité
of
de
time
poser un
here.
maximum de
You will
questions
have the
ici dans la
possibility
salle
of
et
raising a
vous, bien sûr, sur
maximum
le chat,
number
bien sûr.
of
Donc, juste un
questions
petit tour de
in
table
the room.
très très
So,
rapide.
a rapid
Victoire,
turn
The Good
here.
Goods,
Now,
en quelques mots, c'est quoi?
Victoire, the good goods is what?
Non,
In
vous
just
l'avez
a
déjà
few
dit.
words.
C'est l'avantage.
So,
Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
good morning. The Good Goods,
la mode fondée sur des preuves.
D'accord.
in
Donc là,
fact, is
Je
in
sais pas si vous voulez que,
expertise
je détaille un petit peu.
bureau. Do you want me to
Oui, en effet,
detail
la mission,
this?
c'est de
Our
permettre
mission
de faire en sorte que cette industrie
is,
repose
in fact,
sur
to
des
allow
fondements qui sont prouvés, qui sont
in
d'effets
industry
mesurables, une
which
traçabilité sur l'ensemble des chaînes de
is
valeur, une capacité à
based
décomposer
on
des
proof
éléments d'un produit et de faire
to
état des
be
impacts
able to
environnementaux,
know
de
the
ce qui se
different
passe
elements in
d'un
a
point de vue social,
product,
mais
its
également
environmental
de pouvoir
impact,
maîtriser les
and
différents
try
cycles de vie
to
dans les différents
master the
secteurs.
different life cycle
L'étape
aspects.
qui accompagne l'ensemble de ces jalons, c'est
And
probablement la communication.
I
Comment est-ce
think
qu'on met
that
en mots
what's
ce qu'on
important is
fait et comment on fait la
communication
démonstration à la fois aux
to show
particuliers et à la
what
fois
we
aux
are
consommateurs.
actually
Merci, Victoire.
doing and
Sega Aboubacar,
demonstrate
Sega
this.
Kanouté. Comment
Sega Abubakar Sega
comment vous
Kanute,
vous
how
définiriez, vous, s'il
would
fallait
you
définir
define
une de vos nombreuses
yourself
casquettes?
Ouais, c'est ce que
if
j'allais
you
dire.
were
C'est
to
compliqué, hein?
define yourself?
Je fais pas mal de choses, mais moi, ma compétence
I do a
principale, par
lot
exemple,
of
c'est journaliste.
things,
Ouais.
Donc moi,
but my
j'ai bossé
profession
pour travailler
is
pour différents médias
journalist.
comme Canal+, BFM,
I
et puis
have worked
dernièrement,
for
donc là, mon
different
expertise actuelle, c'est
channels,
le
including
vêtement, donc la
BFM,
mode.
Canal+,
Ça, je vous avais indiqué, créateur de contenu. Parce que
and
sur les
so
réseaux
now
sociaux,
I've
je parle pas
become
de
a
style en tant que tel, mais
content
je parle plutôt
creator
de
because
savoir-faire, j'essaie
on
un peu
the
d'expliquer
social media I
un peu
talk
les
about
coulisses de la mode et du cinéma du
know-how.
vêtement
I try
pour essayer
to
de
explain what
décentraliser un
the
peu quelque chose
fashion world is
qu'on connaît pas ou que
backstage. In
personne
fact, I try
normalement dans
to
ce milieu ne connaît pas ou
demystify what
s'intéresse pas
it
du tout.
Mais on
is.
va montrer quelques images après
We're going to
de
show
trucs,
some
effectivement, moi je ne les
pictures
connaissais pas.
later that I
C'est
was
super
not
évidemment,
familiar
vous
with.
vous êtes super branchés, donc vous
I'm sure
connaissez.
that you
Mais
are
moi je
all
ne connaissais
familiar with
pas.
this, but that
Et je
things
suis
I
très
didn't
curieux
know,
d'en
and
parler
I'm
plus avec vous.
very curious to
Swan,
talk about this. Swan.
même punition, vous vous décririez
So
comment? Parce
same
que là,
punishment. How
vous
would you
êtes créatrice de
describe
compte de vidéos,
yourself?
productrice et
You
humoriste.
are a
Ça vous décrit
creator of
parfaitement?
videos,
Très bien
producer,
écrit. C'est moi
and
qui ai envoyé
humorist. Yes, it's a good definition. I
Moi,
sent
je suis
Oui, mais vous
it.
êtes plein
humoriste.
d'autres choses.
So
Voilà, je
you
suis
sent it.
humoriste et je suis
Yes,
humoriste sur scène
I'm a
et sur les réseaux
humorist
sociaux.
on
Donc, on m'appelle
stage and
aussi
on
influenceuse,
the social
influencer
media
comme j'aime dire.
networks.
Et
So
vous, il y a
I'm an
quelque chose que vous me
influencer.
disiez
There's
en
something that
préparant cet
you were
échange,
saying
c'est
when we were preparing
qu'il y a
this
beaucoup
interview
d'influenceurs, eux, leur rêve,
that
c'est
there are a
d'être
lot of
connus, d'être célèbres,
influencers
point
whose
barre. Et
role
donc,
is,
ils ont
whose
dit pour être
desire is
célèbres.
to be known and
Vous, votre truc,
celebrated
c'était
and
faire de l'humour,
famous.
Moi,
c'était pas forcément
Your
délivrer
goal
des grands
was
messages.
to
vivre
be
à Dubaï.
humorous.
Vraiment,
Voilà, vous,
c'est
c'est
mon objectif
vivre à
Me
Dubaï.
principal.
is
Sauf qu'il y
my
a quand même
goal
un
was
truc qui
to
vous a
live in
percuté, c'est une
Dubai.
sorte de choc de conscience.
But in
Et ça
fact,
vous a un peu
there's something
réinterrogé
which
votre
was a
manière
shock. It
d'être
kind ring a bell of awareness here?
Bah, ouais, moi, en
Yes.
gros, moi, je voulais être
Well,
connue au début, donc vraiment depuis mes
let me
12 ans,
say
je voulais
that
être la
since
star de la
my
récré, puis après je me
12
suis rendu compte qu'il
years,
fallait être la star de
I
l'école,
wanted to
etc.
be,
Et après, j'ai
in
découvert les
the
réseaux sociaux, j'étais là, ok, la star
recreation
du monde.
period,
Et
and
à un moment, ouais,
at
je faisais
school and
beaucoup de vues, donc
everything
je me
was
suis
fun.
développée d'abord sur
So
YouTube.
I did a lot of things
J'ai
with
atteint
views,
300 000,
on
400 000, 500
YouTube.
000, et
I
après,
got
j'étais là,
400,
ça sert à rien.
500,000 followers,
Et,
and I thought, oh, great.
et donc, je me suis dit, bah voilà, que
And then I thought,
faire du
well,
divertissement, c'est chouette,
to
faire rigoler
entertain
les gens,
is
c'est chouette, et
fun.
avoir
To
des
make
messages,
people
c'est encore
laugh is
mieux.
a
Donc, je
good
me suis
thing.
interrogée sur
To have a
ce
message
qui
is
comptait pour
even
moi dans la
better.
vie
So then I
et ce qui
tried
compte
to
pour moi dans la vie.
decide what
C'est
was important for
l'écoféminisme
me
et
in life.
l'écologie. Et donc, j'ai commencé à
Well,
en
for
parler beaucoup
me,
sur les réseaux sociaux.
I
Et
started talking a great
c'est
deal
pour ça
about
qu'on va pouvoir
the
s'attacher ensemble
environment, the
Ouais, carrément.
sur nos
ecology,
références.
and
Carrément,
feminism.
et on va le démontrer durant toute cette conversation.
Yes, and so we're going to
Régis
show this during our
Langlade,
conversation.
Régis, vous êtes
Régis
spécialiste en stratégie de
Langlade,
marque, branding chez
you're
UM
an
Worldwide,
expert
directeur
in
marketing et développement, vous d'ailleurs, c'est ce qui est marqué
brand
là, mais c'est pas marqué sur mon site.
strategy and marketing.
Ça vous définit bien aussi, mais il y a sûrement d'autres
Just,
trucs.
I'm sure that
Il y a d'autres
defines what
trucs.
you
J'ai
do,
fait
but you
aussi
probably do other
entreprise, hein, j'ai
things.
créé une agence.
Yes, I
C'est moins
used to have an
populaire.
agency.
J'ai que 300
Not as
followers sur
popular
Instagram.
as
Mais,
Voilà.
not
mais
as
vous, votre
popular
truc,
as
c'est
Swan. I
d'accompagner les
only have
marques aussi
300
dans la
followers on
compréhension des
Instagram.
nouveaux enjeux, quelque part.
But
Des
you
nouveaux
accompany the
enjeux et
brands with
des enjeux
regards to the
actuels.
new challenges,
Aussi, malgré
yes,
tout, parce
and
que,
the present
on
challenges,
en parlait tout à
especially
l'heure, mais il y a
because
une
earlier
notion du temps qui
we
est
were
hyper
talking
importante dans
about
tous ces
time
sujets-là. Et c'est aujourd'hui,
and how
moi je fais
important
face à des
time
marques qui
is
ont
today
besoin,
with
on va dire,
regards
de
to
se faire
these
connaître.
subjects.
Et en
And today I'm
2050,
faced with
je
brands
ferai
that
face à
need
des
to know
marques
each
qui
other.
sont
In
complètement
200,
différentes. Voilà.
in
Oui,
2050,
alors
I'm sure I'll
voilà, parce
be
qu'on est là pour
facing brands that are totally
se poser la
different.
question 2050. Je
So
trouve
here
pas dans les
we
médias.
can raise a
Bon,
question with
je vous
regards to
cache pas que quand on
2050.
s'est tous un petit peu appelés,
And it's clear
j'ai
that we
eu
all
des
got
rires.
into
Alors ça, c'est quand on est en
contact.
visio, on voit des
You know
surprises, on voit
that
des sourires.
I had some
Quand on est au
smiles on
téléphone,
my
on
face when
imagine
you
les yeux
talk to
qui se
people
lèvent
on
au
the
ciel.
phone.
Non, mais
You can
2050,
imagine
j'ai
people's
eu beaucoup d'embarras,
eyebrows raising.
j'ai eu du silence,
2050,
et j'ai eu
I got a
aussi
lot
du mais
of
il y aura plus de
silence
réseaux
in
sociaux,
response to what
il y
I
aura
was
plus de
saying.
médias. Enfin bref,
And I must say
ça
that
peut être aussi drôle et plombant en même temps, quoi.
maybe
2050, je suis
it's
pas dans les médias.
funny, but
Donc on va tout
also
doucement faire un tout petit
worrisome
pas de
as
côté
well
par
when we talk
rapport à cette
about
question-là.
2050.
D'ailleurs, voilà,
So
on passe.
let's set this
Voilà. Et
aside for
là,
a few
je vous
minutes.
propose juste de.
And
Maintenant,
now
on est
what
en
I would like to
2023,
propose
2024
is that
bientôt.
we're in
Comment
2023,
vous voyez
24. So how
les
do
changements
you see
vers ces médias de
the
2050?
changes
Comment vous les
taking
imaginez?
place
Peut-être
towards
vous, Régis, qui êtes
2050
au
in the
contact des
various
annonceurs au jour
media?
le jour.
What about you,
C'est
Regis?
une
You're in
grande, c'est une
contact
grande
with the
question, donc
brand
j'imagine
on
heureusement
a
qu'on a
day-to-day
40 minutes.
basis. Good thing we have
C'est
40
compliqué de se
minutes.
projeter
It's
sur
difficult
2050,
to
de voir,
project yourself
d'estimer
towards
vers où on va. Alors je ne
2050
suis
and
pas
try
sûr
to
qu'on
estimate
puisse
where you're
affirmer il y
going.
aura
I
plus de
don't
réseaux
know whether we can
sociaux,
really make any
il n'y aura plus de planète, il n'y aura plus rien, etc.
assertions that there will
Je
no
pense qu'on
longer
vit
be
dans une société de
social
consommation
media. I think we live
aujourd'hui
in a
qui est ce
consumer
qu'elle est. On l'a
society,
créée. On
and
essaye de lutter contre
we
ça
are
aujourd'hui
trying
parce
to
qu'on se rend compte
create it.
que c'est clairement pas
We're
une
trying
solution,
to
c'est la
fight
cause
this because we
de
know that
notre
this is not a
situation
solution, but
économique,
rather
écologique,
the cause
sociétale,
of our
et que
economic
les
and
marques,
ecological
finalement,
situation
en sont
at
une des
today.
principales raisons.
The
Moi,
brands
mon métier
are, in
aujourd'hui,
fact,
c'est de dire aux
the
marques où
main
est-ce qu'il faut
reasons
aller
for
pour
that.
travailler dans les médias.
So
Donc,
today I
quelles
tell
sont vos
the
audiences,
brands,
qu'est-ce qui les
what
motive
are
au
your
quotidien,
what's
comment
your
faire pour aller les
audience?
capter,
What
comment
is
faire
your
pour générer du
day-to-day
business.
approach to
C'est
capture
presque un
these
gros mot pour
this
respirer, mais c'est
audience
un gros mot
to
pour
generate
pour mes
business?
temps ici.
And
Comment on va
it's almost like
continuer à
brainstorming,
générer du business
like
demain?
here.
Et je
Am
pense
I
que c'est
going
une
to
grande
generate
question
business
à laquelle on n'a
tomorrow?
pas la
I
réponse
think that this
aujourd'hui.
is the big
Quand on est
question
dans les
that we
médias,
don't have an
on
answer
va
for
en voir un
today.
peu plus dans le détail tout à l'heure.
I mean,
Ouais.
maybe we can
Mais
detail
c'est
this
là
in the
où il y a
media
des approches
afterwards.
justement
Yeah,
un petit peu
but this is
différentes
where
pour
we
les marques,
might
pour les
see
annonceurs,
different
à
approaches,
travers
whether it
l'humour
be
ou à
the
travers le
brands,
sérieux,
the
la
advertisers,
preuve. Vraiment,
either
ça c'est super important. Si
seriously or
je
humorously.
regarde Victoire, Swan.
If we look at,
Moi, je pense qu'en
what about
2050, il y
you,
aura plus de réseaux
Victoire?
sociaux et je pense qu'il y aura des
For
pénuries d'Internet.
2050, I
Et
think
c'est
there will
pas drôle,
continue
il n'y a
to
vraiment pas de
be
vanne sur
a
ça.
social
Et je
media
pense
and
que c'est à
internet.
nous tous et toutes,
I
main
think
dans la
that
main,
all
de
of us
préparer
need to
cette
have
transition vers une autre
a
vie
mode of
et notamment aux
preparation
influenceurs, influenceuses
of this
et
transition.
à tous
And all of us, we have to work so as to ensure that to create stories, exchange, watch Netflix today, is not something that's a luxury. I think that we need to say, I like to imagine the worst in 2050 and then try to see how we can create mass movements so that this not be there. so that the world of influence not be nothing but influencers in Dubai. Victoire, I like this forward-looking exercise, but contrary to Swan, I'm a pessimist enthusiast. I deal with my eco-anxiety through action. I look at the future and I look at the story that we need to tell, because this allows us to be actors in this story and try to find the means, the resources, the partners who can help us achieve and write the story we want to write, whether it's positive or negative. I think that the difficulty is to get out of the speculative scenario, which is, based on figures, saying that consumption has evolved in one way or the other. I don't think it's totally the situation, not totally black, or the situation that you've described. I think we need to find disruptive scenario. We need to support the industrialists who propose bold plans so as to get the petrochemical out of fashion. How to work on this, and how do we work on a desirable scenario? What do I want? I think this is important because today, I think as human beings and as consumers, we have lost that capacity to dream of alternative scenarios. So it's a question of changing the narrative, and this so as to tell a good story, a beautiful story, which is not just linear, looking for happiness. How do we explain the circular economy? How do we explain repairability? How can we highlight the verb to be rather than to have? And so I think that maybe this is a kind of prophecy. I would, I think that as far as the media are concerned, in 2050, there could be dozens, information will be even more simplified and skeletal, if you like. Yeah. So I think that this is something that should not be neglected. There's a risk that can be positive or negative depending on the tools. If I want something positive, how can I look at technology, and how can I ensure that artificial intelligence tools are used to create companies which are going to make us happier? And this, contrary to those which are more chemical and are going to be destructive. You talk about the media. There's so many people on Instagram, for example. I think that, you know, you know that, I think that, the way we dress is already a way of influencing people. That's already something when you are on the media. So I think that now here, in fact, there's a massification of information. And I think that we have to be able to sort among the information. Thank you for being, and I think it's a good thing to be positive. It's one step, one way.
Thank you, Victoire. So you work with a lot of media, you do a lot of collaboration with the media. Now, do they change? Do you see them evolve? Well, I evolved with the media. I started with Canal Plus. So I was the only one looking at the social media. Same thing when I came to the radio world. And today I'm in the press, and we all talk about digital, but here again, even the topics and the way people with the topics, if it's not a light message, it's oversimplified. But in the social area, internet brought some interesting things, but there's too much information. and people no longer have the ability of making the right choices. I don't know. Everyone's drowned in information. So we tried to do a bit of sorting, even with our own prism. But in fact, we surf with our filters. And if we look at the latest information, the latest news, I don't know if everyone can move in one direction, because with internet, people are either for or they're against. And even the topic we discussed today is much more complex than being for or against. Now, I think, though, that each person can play his, her role and try to change things around. Now, when I started with the content creation, in the area of fashion, I said, well, I don't care how people are going to get dressed tomorrow and what will be their style, but I'm interested to know how these clothes are made. In fact, no one was interested in that. The agencies didn't want that. The advertisers didn't want that. So it was an individual approach. Yeah. And after that, there's some people who showed some interest, and but even to do that, it requires, or you need to be able to accept the negative impact of your choice, and you have to be, really stubborn in a way. Now, I'm sure that you were faced with that. So in 2050, I think will be our own media, and at our scale, we can try and do something, but we shouldn't be too ambitious. We shouldn't think we can change the world. In fact, what I can do is convince my cousin to stop buying, fast fashion, and that for me is more impacting than trying to have an empirical view of the problem, because that can only generate stress.
Je voudrais, Sega, qu'on commande un petit peu les visuels là. Vous les avez devant
And
vous.
Sega, can you comment the visuals
Une
here?
démarche artistique, finalement, une démarche
This
culturelle.
is an artistic approach, cultural approach, a bit of both, a bit cultural, a bit artistic, and environmental friendly and political. And this is what we call is visible repairs. On the left-hand side with gold threads, this is a Japanese repair method, Mintsugi. So you repair objects with gold to sublimate the product. No, so this is cultural and artistic. You know that in the Japanese culture, you do not throw anything. You try to repair, and you consider that each object has a certain spirit or life. And on the right-hand side, same thing. This is, it's called a patch or a stitch. And here again, it's cultural. It's maybe more Western in the approach, but it happened to us. You damage your genes, and your mother, or your father. Okay, or your father. I'm the son of two mothers, so there wasn't anything negative behind it. I said, so the idea was to repair the jeans and give them a second life. With a hole of the size of Nevada, as one of the speakers said before on the video. Yeah, and this is something that we can each do at our scale, at our level. We see other images of repairs. So it also gives value to the actual repair gesture. Yes, and that is also the point. I would say we today when we talk about ecological, some people consider it's a bad word, but it's a real challenge for society, and it is also to show that when you really are close to the topic, you can act at your level. That is the important message, And as you said before, one of the fundamental things is time, taking time to repair your garment. And the social media, how do you handle backlashes or things like that? Because when we talk about ecology, people have a very strong opinion, either for or against. Well, on my media, I don't have any backlash because I just, shout at everyone. I give my opinion. And so this leads to discussions. Either these answers are done in bad faith or whatever, I just throw them away. And those who follow me understand that, yes, we can discuss things, but now
Moi, je collectionne les dick pics qu'on m'envoie et les vidéos d'hommes
so
qui se masturbent.
collect, in fact, all the videos I get from men masturbating, and one day I'll do an exhibit.
Sur les réseaux de Good Goods, d'avoir
on the Good Goods network, I have few negative messages, but when it is the case, well, anger is a sign of fright. It means that people are asking themselves questions. So usually I answer and I said, can we come back to your point? Why are you angry at this brand? And it usually, is a good approach. Last week we worked with Bompard. They gave or published their CSR strategy, and we have received many messages thanking us. But someone said, we spent 500 euros to, in fact, buy a sweater from them, and they sent us a sweater in synthetic fiber, and on top of that, it suffered at the first washing. So in fact, it was good to have this reaction, and on top of that, when we answer something positive, it does raise the trust in our media and the trust vis-à-vis the brand. A second example, 2 years ago, we had posted an article on what is happening in Bangladesh, in fact, 10 years after the Plaza attack. And we had someone who had worked 5 years, in fact, in Bangladesh in a production plant, and they, in fact, or that person gave us a different, completely different story concerning that attack. So that was also a very positive thing. But anyway, I did have the same experience as Swan Périssé. And, you know, in 99% of the cases, yeah, we get constructive comments. And it takes a lot of time, collecting and preparing an exhibit probably requires a lot of time. Huh? Now, in fact, we're talking about things among ourselves, but you know, we have our own filters, and the challenge is for collectively getting out of this and starting discussions with people who do not think like us, you know, people who are aware of things, but they might have a different opinion. So we have to go in that direction and also go beyond those, even to try and address people who are not interested in the topic. Well, I try to create bridges between those who follow me because I have a sense of humor and what I have to say on ecology. So I created a podcast, which is in fact a sort of show. It's on YouTube. It's called There Is No Longer Any Seasons. So it's humorous, but we also have Jean-Claude Vissy, who is in fact an ecology expert. So we have, you draw the portrait of your visitor. And thanks to that, I tried to create that bridge between those people who love Jean-Claude Vissy, who follow long conferences on ecology, etc., and others who look at content because they like to laugh, because they love my jokes. Even my dirty jokes. Well, anyway, so and I see people who are, you know, used to serious discussions on environment, and the others who like humor and they get a few messages about ecology. So this is also something I tried to do in my podcast. Now, don't forget to prepare your questions. I see many questions already. Go on. If I can say a few words about the backlash we talked about. Now, I would be worried, you know, if everyone had a consensus and consensus on the social media. This is worrying because, you know, it might be just vertical information which will stop individuals of criticizing or having another opinion. So the backlash is not that bad, you know, otherwise it could be just a greenwashing. So anyway, in my opinion, it's an open door to transparency, and you can actually, I think, communicate better on the path that still needs to be traveled. So I'm not sure you need to avoid backlashes. And Régis, you accompany brands and give them advice. What about greenwashing? It's not a simple issue. So how do you accompany them, help them, and how do they perceive everything that is happening? What you say is very true. There's a real need of transparency. By definition, people distrust responsible communication. Now, 75% of the French people believe that if the brand talks about responsible communication, the citizens, you know, have the feeling that the company is trying to hide something, the brand's trying to hide something. So, you know, the consumer knows that the brand is there to sell. Huh? Yeah, go ahead. I'll intervene afterwards. And yes, greenwashing. Well, that's unfortunately the consequences of a brand who wants to do the right thing, but does it wrongly, or it's just a marketing thing. The brand decides I need to speak about those topics, but people, in fact, don't communicate in the right way. So everyone has a doubt about what the brands say. And the brands, we talk about brands in the broad sense of the term. Each brand, of course, is different. But do the brands understand the role they can play or they play? Well, yes and no. I'm not sure they understand. Refashion, let's say, is a brand, but Refashion is not there to sell. It's to bear messages, communicate messages. But when we take a brand that is producing, doing marketing, selling, that has an after-sales service, well, there I'm not sure it's clear everywhere. There is some awareness among the brands and the consumers, but there's no real commitment, in my opinion, to make things change. And there is a barrier that is blocking, is that brands do business and they follow a business model. And to change their position in the area of responsibility, they have to change their business model. How can you do that? You want to go on growing. You want the brands want to go on existing, but they want to have a real impact on consumers. We don't have a solution yet. Okay, what did you want to say? Well, the comment is a fair one. I created my own project also. At the start, it was an editorial desire. I asked myself, can we create clothes today while limiting our impact on the environment? So I asked questions to brands, and no one was really able to answer me. So I said, okay, try and create something yourself. So I worked on a project and I said, okay, I'll try to start with what exists. And the idea is to create something without adding any environmental wastes. And yes, then you have to make a living, but in fact, in doing so, I didn't make a living. I even lost money. And when it comes to transparency, well, I say that because I was a journalist, and for journalists, transparency is very important. But at the time, I thought, how am I going to communicate around my project? I don't have any money. Well, I just explained to people what I did, and I explained the whole approach. I told them about the idea down to the manufacturing. I gave them everything. I told them the workshop is that, the designer is that person, this person is helping me with the production. So they see everything. And transparent also concerning your difficulties. Yes. And the fact that, in fact, it doesn't bring any money, because it doesn't, you don't get any return. I see hands rising here in Paris. Go ahead with your question. How do you reach these people who are outside our world, our bubble? Well, this is something I often repeat. And one of the first things I heard when I was in the journalist school, they said, imagine you're talking to your mother or your father. As a journalist, the idea is not to make an official speech and tell people this is what you need to do. No. And when I communicate on Instagram, it's very simple, and I use terms everyone understands. I just talk about, for example, trousers, and not maybe the technical terms. I'm a consultant in circular economy, and I wondered about greenwashing and the role of journalists in this area. Often, when we follow the news, we see articles saying, look at the solution that is developing. It is the solution that is going to be a real revolution. And each time we have to say, be careful, it's one solution, but it's not the only solution. So I'd like to get your opinion on this, because I think that there are too many articles telling us, that this is the solution to all our problems. Now, who would like to answer that? Online, we received a lot of questions online. We won't be able to answer them all, but they will be kept and will actually feed our work. And online, you can also answer questions if you want. There are 3 questions, so please answer the questions on the platform. So thank you for this question, a very important one, rarely mentioned. And I had a panel discussion last week with the brand Picture and Quota Climat. And we also had a long interview with Béatrice Serrault, an expert in economics and CSR. So it's a very rich topic. I'll try to summarize what we see. There are 2 types of problems. Now, first of all, the training of the journalists, ongoing training, continuous training or lifelong education. This is something that is lacking in the world of journalism. And
de convertir aussi potentiellement ses actionnaires pour pouvoir mettre de l'argent sur la table pour former ses équipes.
You can learn how to convince your shareholders, for example, convince them to raise this or that topic. On top of that, when you're a journalist, you're not always the expert. You have to choose maybe the right expert. But there's also the question of time and formats imposed on journalists. Now you have the digital dimension, but there's a sort of race, for people to come out with an article. Now today we have the SEOs, and once again, there is a positive dimension in AI, and I think that bad quality content will be maybe eliminated with AI. And maybe we'll be able to have a quality journalism who will be able to cross the data. But to do that, you need time, skills, and a network to come up with the top quality articles. When you mentioned financial means, you said yes. Well, journalists also are to remain neutral or moderate. And this type of article, well, they probably have not used filters to produce that, and it may be the people reads the article and draws an opinion from it, and that's it. And everything is click-based, so people write content that will lead to a click. It's a responsibility that is shared with public relations people. I work with the press officers, and they don't do the same work. I've been in a showroom, and I heard people said, for that brand, environment is in their DNA, and And, I look at the label and I see polyester on the product. So it means that the journalist, didn't know what she was talking about. But anyway, you can do a quality clip for just 1 minute and have a very good reach. And you will reach out to people who maybe were not interested in the topic. I would say also, what do we want? A topic on BFM or C News will last 1 minute. Is that enough to share some thoughts? And on internet, what do you read? 3, 4 words. And is that enough to draw information? So, and training, ongoing training, yeah, I agree. What I like in my job is that I learn every day. And, I try to put myself in question. But then in the area of media, you have the advertisers. And you have the editorial line that the actual media has chosen. What kind of sort of training are you going to give to your journalist? And we shouldn't forget the advertisers. It's a reality. For example, Swan has decided to set partnerships with some people. It means also renouncing financial resources. Yeah, I'm talking about a macro point of view. We are 2 people here, okay, but there are thousands of people out there, and there are few people, I think, who act like that. Okay, now it is 11. My little light is now red. So I'll ask you another question. I know that there are many, many things to say. We were only able to take one question, but just one word and ending. Reinventing. Yeah, there are too many things to change. We have to reinvent. Sega? It's hard. Victoire? Regenerate. I like this idea that we can let Earth do its job. Rest, maybe, then, if I can't say regenerate. Slow down, which is, okay. Re-slow down. Okay. And Sega, still restart, better. Or redo or repair.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Thank you very much for your participation. Okay, it's now time for a break. But at 11:28, please be back, and we'll start at 11:30. And online, stay connected.